to answer your questions, Anjana, I think both 1 and 2 in my organization would be me. There is no really one person who's responsible for content. It's everybody, but putting on a comms hat and making sure that something goes out to the public is something that I do. And there's another person who is a visual sketch note artist at the organization who looks at another aspect of the newsletter. So there are basically two people who are working on this, at least in my organization. But I don't know if you were asking this question very particularly about uh, our specific work, or was it in general, like who should be doing it?
No, this is about your work, and yeah, like the way you answered it is perfect.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Who wants to go next?
Okay, should I go next?
Sure.
Yeah.
I can't really see, but go for it.
Okay. Okay.
Now I can. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm Nikita. I work for Biome Solutions, which is basically an organization which is working on water management. I work with the water management team. To answer this specific question, who is responsible for providing content? So with content management, we don't have too many platforms that we're working on. It's really primarily a blog right now, and we kind of looking to expand, and actually because a lot of the work that we do is with citizen engagement, we want to be on more platforms, and that's probably also the reason why I'm here today and kind of trying to understand how all of this works. Currently, who's responsible for providing the content? It's all of us, and we also the ones just updating on the blog, let's say, or other social media channels, but we want to kind of streamline it at this point, and I'm looking at figuring out how do we one providing content versus actually putting it up and communicating it to a larger audience. That's something that we're still in the process of figuring out. So this will be something good to understand for me as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Vaishnavi?
Hi, 1 second. Hi, so I'm Vaishnavi and I'm working with CSEI, which is an organization that does a lot of tree plantation work, but more specifically on agroforestry in rural India, and also works on water body rejuvenations. I am fairly new to the organization. It's been less than a month since I joined, so it's a very transitional role. Who's responsible for providing content? Because we work in a bunch of states, a lot of our content comes from on-ground staff. We also have a videographer on board to help with some of the more serious production, heavy production videos. But since I've come in, I will be taking a lot of that off their hands. So like I said, it's still a transitional role. Who's accountable for communication? My title is Communication and Outreach Manager. So me, but right now, not entirely, because I have a few teammates helping out, passing on what they've been doing so far so that I can take it on, probably change a few things. So yeah, I thought this meeting would really help kind of streamline that process.
All right, thank you. I hope this session actually meets all your expectations. We'll see about that. Is there anyone else that I'm missing? I think everyone's sort of, we've gone once around the room, right? So I think I'm just going to move these panels around so I can actually see my screen better. Hide video. No, that's the wrong thing to hide, but it's okay. So I think like this sort of answers. I mean, I know that this is a thing, like a sort of given thing in all organizations where we say that, oh, like we have half a person or one person for communications, but all of us are responsible for content. All of us, like everyone being responsible for communication is never a good idea. There has to be a person who who is at the end of the day responsible for it. I think the difference that who has to be accountable for it, sorry, the difference, I would like to make a difference between who is responsible for providing content and who's accountable for communication. Like most of you were saying, the content itself comes from program teams, or people working on the ground or in different states, wherever that is. The content, what are we going to talk about? So updates or announcements or campaigns, things like that come from them. But campaigns as in like we need to talk about this particular, let's say, World Water Day is coming up, so we need to talk about it, something like that. But who's accountable for communication that's the only responsibility a comms team person should ideally take up. I know that we end up taking up, like I'll also draft blogs and from the beginning, and I'll go to all these meetings and start collecting information, and that's when I think it gets out of hand. But the distinction I would like to make is that the raw content comes from program teams, but the communications team or person is accountable for the output. So what goes on the blog, what goes on social media, what goes in a newsletter, like we are responsible for it, but the actual content comes from the team. Moving on. Yeah. So this is something, I don't know if all of you work like this. Stop me anytime and ask me specifics, but this is how, this is like a way of working that I find works for me, and I've had some success with this, which is like the content flow where content starts coming in from the program team. So they are the ones who are giving you a update on upcoming activities. And then like we go into the comms team itself, decides on channels on which we will post specific content that needs to go out. So all this World Water Day, things, observances, days like that would come under the purview of comms team. If somebody gives me an update, I'm the one who decides that, there's a day coming up, we should write something about this. So we decide that, but we also decide it with the program team, if that makes sense. And we finalize content. That finalizing happens, the work is done by the comms person, but it's in conjunction with the program team. So we keep them involved, but we are the ones who are making the big changes. Then all this content gets published. So for CSEI, the main place where we sort of create content is the blog, and everything sort of starts off as a blog because it's a very, very low risk activity. Like even for people who are hesitant to write, we start with the blog because we say, you don't need to write a lot. You can write, it's easy to put together. I can help you put it together. It has to anyway be conversational. So we found that starting with the blog is a good place to start. And once the blog so every idea starts as a blog. So there's very little resistance. And also, I think people don't take it seriously enough. And that's probably not a good thing, but basically it's not a big deal to start with. And once the content starts shaping up, the comms team decides whether it should be a media article or is there enough content in there to make it a media article. And I think all of us sort of struggle with this. The work we do is very complex, like how do I explain it to somebody? So I think we take that call of whether this has enough meat to go as a media article. Does it have enough? Is it saying enough? So that's a call we take. And once that's done, so for the program teams, that is the only time they are involved in content creation. So after that, we repurpose on like all channels. So a blog post that's written once gets, I'll get into the details of this, but basically it becomes, we turn it into a video, we turn it into, it goes in the newsletter. I'll show you like how exactly, but basically the same content gets talked about in different formats. So I think, like correct me if I'm wrong, but most of us are working on, let's say maybe three big things, like three big programs, or maybe like five big programs, especially if we have such a small team. So then there are only those many things that we are talking about. And it's like, it's important that we talk about it in different ways, so that somebody who doesn't like reading will see it as an image somewhere, or see it on social media somewhere. We do some kind of interactive poll or quiz or something like that, and they happen to see it somewhere. So I think a lot of it is just rehashing the same content, or similar content. So the good thing about blog is that the bar is very low to write, like internally with the team, the bar is too very low, but also we have full control. It's unlike a media article. We have full control of how we want to write about something. And the third thing is that it can be plugged anywhere. So it's just a link, right? So we, like, the more blog posts we write, the more we cross link to like older posts. So we are able to form this narrative of, oh, like we started in 2019, here's where we are at. So when we are writing about it today, we sort of just call back things from which were written earlier. So this is the content flow that we follow. Moving on to content sources. Again, like these are questions for you, like how often do you create content? For me, I can answer this first. We create content on the blog every week. Our social media is like thrice a week, mostly because I did not have the bandwidth when we started to do it every day. And this is something I'll talk about later as well, but it's important to define the scope of what you are able to achieve as a single person team, even if you have other people helping you out, because any organization's goal like cannot be met by a single person's 8 hours of activity. So I think it's very important to start small, and you can always like make a case for bringing in a bigger team and all of that. But so yeah, like how often do I create content? Once blogs are weekly, we do sometimes up to like 3 blogs a week. How far ahead do we plan? I used to plan 2 weeks in advance, but I mean, sorry, 2 months in advance. But now we have a larger team, so we're able to do more. And I want to do, we're in the process of bringing it, like down to a month or so. Do you repurpose? I want to know if you repurpose content, because it's my pet topic.
I think I'll just go with the order as previous before. How often do we create content? So I started in November, and I've handled social media before, but not in this capacity. I've never worked with a conservation background as such. So for me, that was a difficult transition. So initially, I had people from my team helping me out. Currently, we do 2 blogs a month. My hope is to have 1 blog every alternate week. We've not met the alternate week standard, but we do have, like, we've been doing 2 blogs a month. We've hit the January and February targets already, so it's nicer to have that. As far as planning goes, it's sort of like a last moment thing. So we set up topics we wanted to talk about, and those are assigned to different people, and I help them like put words together. So whichever is the closest to completion and whichever seems most relevant gets like more priority, and we work on it together. So that's sort of like it. So if I say like we are going to put the blog on Friday,
Monday we would probably have like a almost complete draft, and everyone has like say an hour in their day to like sort through it. So by Wednesday or Thursday we are almost okay, and then on Friday we have like the final edits and it goes on the blog. The second part, what happens after the blog is posted, is resharing on social media. We are currently active on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So I basically create like a very small brief which talks about what the article is or who wrote it and whatever's like a single byline, which goes as like the header for the article with the link. So it's a very short activity, but the blog still remains like the key. There's no repurposing of content as such in that manner. It's just sharing of that information. Roughly.
And yeah, thank you. Who wants Grishma?
Yeah.
Let's go in order.
Okay, sure. We don't really write blogs frequently. So there is a newsletter which is not a traditional kind of newsletter. There is a mix of illustrations and a few lines written below, and that's when the entire team comes together, decides the topics well in advance. So that's about 2 months in advance, similar to what you said. That's the newsletter. The organization itself, Socrates, has two profiles on different platforms. So one is for the organization Socrates, and the other is a platform that we run called Janta Ka Faisla. So that itself has its own Twitter and Instagram, as well as Facebook pages. The reason we decided to make these different different accounts is because each of them caters to a different audience. Janta Ka Faisla is at the moment is largely towards the Hindi speaking population. So I mean the content that we post there is different. So the content that we create as well as what we post is different for each of the platforms. And when it comes to on the point 2 of your question, for Socrates, the thing social media at least is weekly. I mean there are posts that go almost twice in a week. Whereas for Janta Ka Faisla, there is usually around an event, so 15 days before and 15 days after, and then like a staggered sort of posting calendar. And yes, of course, we do repurpose content for videos and for short reels that come, or just some collaterals that are posted later. So, but then Anjana, I wanted to ask you a question on, you said about bandwidth for posting, or how content is created. Is there like I don't know, like a benchmark or a standard that people should be posting so that you are regularly, your content is being regularly consumed by folks, or is there a benchmark for such a thing?
I would think that depends on your, like if you've decided on your audience, like who your audience is, and what it is that, like if you're clear on who your audience is and what you want to say, the frequency itself is not that important. Like there is no I don't think it makes a lot of difference if you post like 7 times a day to like twice in a week, as long as it also depends a lot on the kind of content you're posting, like what kind of organization you are, who do you want to reach, and all of that. But I think that's a call that can be taken based on like it's a very customized sort of call, which is not, I don't think there is a standard for it, as long as you are consistent. So right. If you're saying you post twice a week and you post twice a week like for 7 years, then that's good. But if you say I'll post every week and then you post every week for 2 months, then I don't know, like the COVID or something, and like you don't post for the next 2 months, that's not a good idea. But otherwise, I think there is enough leeway in that.
Right. Thanks.
Who's going next? Nikita?
Yeah, sorry. So how often, so the way the organization works is also a lot around just ongoing activities, and we have so many different projects happening on the go and so many different teams involved. So it's really just each team kind of owning up and putting it up on the blog. It's really difficult from there to transition to planning on posting it on other social media. And that's where I think we just kind of left it at this point, because it gets kind of, I don't know, really difficult. But when it comes to events, though, there is we also host a lot of events with, like, to create awareness on, let's say, water management and so on. So that's of course something that is more systematic in the way it's planned and the way it goes out on social media. But general work in itself, and there is a lot of content that of course can be posted, it's really just on the blog, and that's maybe like almost 4 or 5 times in the week sometimes. But yeah, none of that transitions to something else right now. So yeah, that's where it's at.
And are you in charge of like making that happen, or do the
So
teams
that's,
write it?
yeah. So the reason I'm here is also try to figure out something for the organization at this point. Not that I want to be doing it. I am a project manager in the team as well. Been doing been creating content, but not really. That's something that we'll have to figure out how to go about. Just like you said, having a communication team in its entirety, kind of take that forward, versus the project team itself trying to take that forward every time, because that's where we were struggling, where the project team in itself is also managing the communication side of things. So I would be taking that forward though. So yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Who
Hi,
else? Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so a bit of context. CSEI was managed by everyone in the office, specifically one project manager who's been doing a great job. But it was just a side activity and not specifically the main task, which is why I was roped in. So how often we create content is very arbitrary. It kind of depends on the team's mood. I'm trying to change that. How far ahead do you plan for it? We don't often plan for it. There are sometimes, there was an designer out, as in like a freelance designer who used to help us make stuff for some festivals or something of that sort. That was the only planned content. Otherwise, it was mostly whenever we have photos. Earlier, before the pandemic, there used to be a lot of events. So photos from the events used to go up on your social media. There is no planning. Again, I'm trying to put a calendar in place, trying to work on all of that, very early stages. Repurpose content, it's pretty much all we do. We don't have a blog or a newsletter yet. So usually one photo, one graphic that we use from one social media platform is what we use throughout all of them. Yeah, that's me.
Okay, thank you. I think like repurposing content is my favorite. That and templatizing is my favorite hack. I think it, especially for really small teams, and by repurposing, by the way, I don't mean like using the same thing in like if it's an image, using the same image on multiple platforms, not like that. But we let's say there is a blog post, and we create like video content from it. Like there are Canva videos that we create from it. So the program teams themselves are not involved in anything beyond that blog creation, which is a one-time thing, but it constantly we are creating different kinds of content out of the same piece. So that blog creation it's sort of intense in that there's back and forth, and like everyone needs to agree that this is what we're saying and all of that. But beyond that, like when we create an infographic or we create a video, that bit is mostly just the comms team, and it just gets sent to them for like a final look, and that makes the process itself much easier. That's something I think could work in a small team, especially if there is enough planning planning to, like, even if you're not creating a a lot of content, or like you were talking about how if there isn't like the social media campaigns for an event are planned out properly, right? And if content as well can be planned out like that, like there is a reason why event publicity is planned, right? It has to happen by this date. So similarly, if you can do that with content, I mean, I know that it can be done with content. One way to do it is to sort of capture one, like document, take the team's help and document something, and then like we as a team sit and make more things out of it. So that's that. This is I'll just take you through how I do it. So this is our, like I said, everything starts with the blog. So the blog is a place where we document all our like if there are trainings or actual updates, activities, but also our learnings. If we are course correcting, if there are failures, we capture all of that. Any kind of insight, impact. So actually what's actually the process of how we work is captured on the blog, and it's quite indiscriminate. I mean, we have all kinds of things going up there. And anything that goes on the blog also goes on social media. So that's like one layer of doing it, which all of us have talked about. Newsletter. We have a monthly newsletter, which is our, I would say, our most engaged audience, and we get a lot of like a lot of like response from there, and a lot of like callbacks and like asks to like collaborate, and just generally it's our most engaged platform. So my newsletters, I know for this is February, right? Like I know for 2 months, like for March and for April, I know what goes in the newsletter, like what's going to be the theme of the newsletter. So then like all the team meetings, all the other meetings that I attend, like I'm always on the lookout for what goes in the newsletter. Like a slight difference in the way our newsletter goes out is that it's program based. So every month we talk about one, it's like a deep dive for one of our programs. We have 3 programs. So we write about one program every quarter. I mean, one program gets repeated every quarter. So then the newsletter is essentially like blogs combined. I don't create any new content for newsletter at all. The newsletter's theme is planned in advance, and then the blogs which are written are sort of written with this in mind, that it will go out in the newsletter. So there's so in February there is focus on this program. So a lot more gets written about this program. Then the other thing is that okay, so this is how, like what happens on a monthly basis. So newsletter goes out, we try to create one video on a monthly basis. We post, we pitch media articles and try to get at least 1 or 2 published a month. It's usually 2. So we try and get 2 media articles published. Again, here we started with 1, and sort of now we are at a stage where 2 is comfortable, and we want to get to a place where like more are comfortable, and we're figuring out how to do that. But so this is where I was talking about setting smaller goals. The other is event. Like we have quarterly events, so same thing applies. Like when there is an event, I get to know. Or like we decide a date 2 months out. And then work backwards from there. So then the newsletter is part of the newsletter that goes out in that period, talks about the event. All the blogs are about the event. So event publicity happens through the blog, and so it just trickles down. and there is no content created outside of this, basically. Same with website. We plan to edit it or change it twice a year. We like when that happens, we usually just update it with blogs we've written, and the blogs are written in such a way that there is if there is a, let's say, a campaign or a pilot that's been done, everything about it is captured in a written or in a video format, and we just put all of that together on the website. Same with the annual report. These team meetings, monthly team meetings, are in a template which follows the annual report. So essentially, when I have to put the annual report together, which is now, I'm just looking at team meetings from the past year and like the presentations they made. And it's literally just moving things from that to the annual report. So that's how we look at content. If you guys, I will stop here and ask if you have any questions. I can't see you. I have to like move my panels around to be able to see you, which is why.
Vaishnavi here. So the media articles that we talk about, it's not something I've done before. Is this media mention where other journalists write about the organization, or is it something that we write and put out in media?
So we've done both. When there is an event, we try to get a reporter copy, which is a journalist comes and writes about us. But generally, we try to pitch an article and write it and get it published. So like I said, our content starts as most content, I would say like 90% content starts as blogs, and then as they get written, we sort of figure if there is enough to be able to pitch to a media. To be able to pitch to a media, you need it to be relevant, you need it to be in the news, like something in the news, or like topical, basically. Then you need to be able to show how you are an expert, or like why are you writing about this at this time. That needs to be answered. So if the blog looks like something that can be turned into something like that, then we pitch it as a media article. And with media articles, we have been successful, but it's very hit or miss. So it's not something that we track conscious. I mean, we track consciously, as in we have a goal that's sort of increasing as we do better and better, but it's not something that's in our control. So a lot of the time we publish something, and then let's say good example is General Rawat, that accident happened, which sort of like takes over that news cycle, right? We could have submitted something, but it's just there's no way we'll get anything in for the next 2 or 3 weeks. So then there is a huge lag. So that happens quite a bit. Same with budget, same with budget is again something we can predict. So we don't pitch something in the beginning of February, but essentially that, like it's something we do, but it's not completely in our control. So yeah.
Thanks.
And we have a media list we are like slowly building out.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for that.
Yeah. Anyone else have any question?
This might seem like a very basic question. Hi, Grishma here. The kind of post that you maybe that goes on, say, Twitter or say even your blogs, they might be conducive to certain audiences, but something that goes on LinkedIn might be something completely different, right? And sometimes to save time, you may use platforms like StoryChief or equivalents, where you create the content and just post it on different platforms. So sometimes the challenge that I face is the content that goes on each of these platforms needs to be slightly different. And most of the time the challenge is with LinkedIn, because most of the time it is a slightly formal platform. So how do you deal with such a problem?
So what we have done on LinkedIn is that most of our blogs sort of get shared on their platform and on their like writing platform. And we used to publish, we used to send out similar content on Twitter and LinkedIn, but we used to actively tag people that we know we think should read something like this. And most of the time it's a hit because these are a lot of our connections. I think the backstory is that a lot of our connections, the more we write, a lot of our connections come from LinkedIn. So a lot of people know about us through LinkedIn, so they actually don't mind us tagging them. Or it's very, our audience is also very specific. Like we're looking only at like donors and partners. So these are people who are in our already in our network, or people that we want to reach, but they also have context to the work we do. So I don't think we've really faced that issue. And till, I would say like till, yeah, like till maybe Jan is when we actually got a social media person who does, I mean, who looks at it full time.
Right.
Otherwise, we used to just like post and forget on LinkedIn. And also because LinkedIn is, yeah, because of this, that we already have connections coming in through LinkedIn. And we've generally had a lot of success with LinkedIn.
I see. Thanks.
I know it doesn't answer your question.
No, I mean, I think it does, right? Like you said, it's a specific audience, so it still is a hit for you. So I think it makes sense. Yeah.
And I think it's the audience, again, like I'm unable to like answer that specifically because that audience depends on who your organization is trying to reach out to.
Right.
We are very clear that that audience is donors, and we also have like a fundraising person who looks at who exactly we should be reaching out to. So that person sort of helps us tag, and like we know when we put something out, like who needs to see, like let's say a blog post about like why is lantana bad, like a donor needs to see it, which donor. So we sort of have a sense of who that is, or who, let's say, 10 people who should know about this.
Right. So a written post, like a blog or some content that has, a certain specific number of words is always better for LinkedIn, I'm guessing, rather than just images or videos.
I think images also work well with on LinkedIn. I think the other thing that works really well is if you sort of like it's basically a place where people network, right? So if you do the same thing, which is to tag, like talk about collaborations that you're doing, or like basically tag someone else who in a context that has worked well for us, which is let's say this project that's funded by this organization like RCF is doing well. Things like that really seem to work for us.
Right. Thanks.
Anyone else has a question? Okay, so this is about content sources. Then we move on to channels. So other than these, are there any channels that you use to communicate, and how are you measuring your success? Is my next question for all of you. I can, if you want, I can start. These are the only channels that we are on. And I think the other big place where we communicate is like conversations. We have a lot of conversations with people in the sector. With like I, as a comms person, I talk to a lot of other comms people on other nonprofits. So generally, to get a sense of how they do things. Similarly, like the fundraising person talks to fundraising people, and so generally we have a lot of conversations. I think but I think it's not easy to quantify, which is why I have not put it in there, and it's not measurable either. We do measure it in terms of, like somebody said, our newsletter looks nice, or like that, anecdotally, but it's not possible to see where some of these conversations are going or how much success there is. How do we measure impact? That's essentially the next slide. So I'll talk about it in a minute. If you guys, if you want to talk about it. You're on mute, Nancy.
Hi. So the first thing I think all of us decided in office and was like, we worked on looping back all our communication to the website, which made like measuring, how much reach it has much clearer, which was one good thing we did. Prior to my appointment, I think they had Instagram and Twitter, which Twitter was much more active, predominantly because the person who was handling communications was more of a Twitter person than a person who used Instagram, which is why it worked. Like it worked great because he was more into one-on-one communication and that helped. Right now, it's not that way. We still are like looping back things to the website. So what we did discuss was like our intent on different social media was different. Like on Instagram and Twitter, it meant that we wanted to give a sort of announcement key. Oh, we're doing this. This is what we've worked on. Like, take a look at this. With other media, like I got them on Discord and Reddit, and a couple of them use Stack Exchange and Reddit for their personal purposes. As in, like, okay, I have a doubt with this tech question. Who do I approach? And Stack Exchange is much more easier to like approachable in that sense. We work a lot with GIS, and one part of GIS is 3D mapping and Blender and all of that. And it's a very experimental space because no one's really like learned it, but it's sort of like, oh, you see, and okay, this seems like a good tutorial to follow, and we go forward. So our intent is based on 2 points. Like one is learning and one is announcement of sorts. So these are the channels divided between like we go Discord, Reddit, and possibly Stack Exchange for our queries and communications. Another thing which you said, like people networking and all of that, a lot of that for people in office, it happens through something called Y Labs. It's a community for conservationists who are in tech, and the other platform is Twitter. For the foundation's communication, I think it primarily relies on our website and Twitter. Instagram exists, but it's not beyond, okay, it's a photo media and that's what has happened. It doesn't go beyond a certain point. I know it feels like, okay, it hit the algorithm and we go like very crazy fast. But I don't see it happening, as a possible, with the content we produce, I don't think like that's a very possible situation. For measuring impact, yes, since we looped back all of our communication to the website, it's currently watching the website's analytics in Squarespace. I think we're trying to get it linked to Google Analytics so we can have like a much better measure. But so far it's just the website. Sorry, the answer was too vague.
I actually learned a lot from that, Nancy. Sorry, can I go next?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I think we also don't have any other communications channels, and even our website is hosted on Notion, so it's not really a WordPress. I mean, we've used Notion because it's quite fluid, and there can be multiple editors, and it's much easier. But I think there are also some hindrances to using Notion, and we're trying to address that. Apart from that, and actually we're not even measuring success or impact at the moment because all of the channels are going very separate. But maybe that's something that should be done going forward. So I think my question comes here is, what do you do once you have these analysis, right? Like how do you course correct, or what next steps should come in?
Yeah, I'll talk about that in my next slide in little detail. Sure. But if we can just finish, I'll remember that and I'll make a note and talk about that. If we can just go through, go around the room and finish this conversation.
Yeah. So just want to acknowledge that a lot of the answers are also just helping me just understand what goes on. Right now, we're really just active on our website and the blog, like I said, and it's all just any information that we want to kind of update just goes back onto the blog, and then from there, eventually, we do update the website more frequently. But yeah, nowhere else right now. There are I mean, there are Twitter and there is Instagram and everything, but it's very rarely do we update it. And we also are on YouTube. So a lot of the events that we are doing right now kind of go up as videos as well on YouTube. So yeah, that's about it. Really, to answer the second question, no work on that at all. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
For us, our main channels of communication are just social media and our website. Actually, that's our only channels. Now I'm working on getting a newsletter and a blog started. That's in the pipeline. But also more urgently, we are focusing on Wikipedia and Quora. So still largely just social media and the website. We are not measuring success impact so far, but I've just started on Instagram with just linking it and making it a business profile so we can see the amount of saves and comments. So I can measure it on that, but very early stages.
All right.
I have a question for Vaishnavi. When you say Wikipedia, do you mean going and editing public pages since it's open source, or?
We are just trying to put out a page on Say3 so people know what
okay.
is that.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I think this is something everyone talked about, right? That it's important to have a primary channel, and it's important that we have a primary channel where we own the content as opposed to social media, where even on a blog, that at least the content on the blog is yours and you can move it from there. But any of the social media channels, if let's say if Instagram is where you're housed, like a lot of let's say home bakers or home like very very starting phase entrepreneurs, then if they change anything about their channel, then we stand to lose a lot of the content. So that's something to remember. Having said that, like our website was started by our first employee, and she is our fundraising person. So there is some some sense to what's on the website, but it's something that we struggle with as well. Like it's something that we need to relook at, redesign, which is on the cards right now. And I think it's a good idea. This is something we are talking about as well, where ideally it should be on our website where we have full control. Like all our content is housed on our website, on a blog that's ours. And that's something like we are considering doing, but it's also this is, a lot of us work with this, right? This is like the legacy that I sort of like walked into, and like I'm trying to make the most of it. I think a lot of our channels and a lot of spaces we are in are like that. So it's just something to remember. This is, and I think, I can't stress enough how important it is to just plan and measure. It doesn't matter if you're doing, like we are doing one blog, one media article a month or one video a month. We still measure it because there are two reasons. One is that at the end of a year, you will be, if you do a great job, let's say like you're fantastic at what you do, then you can, like, this is how you like demonstrate success, right? You can show this and say, here's the reason why I need 2 more people on my team. And like, I have shown you that what I can do as a person, but if you give me like 2 more people, like we will do like much X more than this. That's one thing. And the other is that, there is no other way of measuring, right? Like I know from like what I do in a day, that there's just like a ton of things. We're constantly in the weeds. Like if this is over, then there's something else, then there's something else. And we're just doing and doing and doing. And unless we set some time aside to plan a year or even a quarter, and I know that, so CSEI is a very new organization where planning a year in advance is actually not possible. So my plan, like what I say I will do in Q4, it could be completely different, like when I actually get to Q4. But it also shows you that this is where you want it to get to. And like these are not set in stone. And it's not that you put a number to it, you have to reach that number. It's mostly for some kind of like personal accountability, but also for it's an outward looking thing. It's a way to actually quantify the amount of work that's happening. So I think there is, even if you are on 2 channels or like starting out, figuring things out, even if that's the case, set a number, put it down somewhere on some fancy looking sheet, and in a way that people can see it. And I think there is a lot of value in doing that. So like I mean, these are just a couple of things that we track. And I think there is a lot of value in tracking, let's say, for instance, new subscribers, right? Newsletters, new subscribers. There is, because it's a sort of, so for CSEI, for instance, newsletter is the most engaged sort of platform. And if I'm able to show that I'm bringing in, let's say, a 10% increase in subscribers year on year or whatever, like quarter by quarter, there is like that's building my community, right? That's directly building CSEI's community, and that's directly furthering CSEI's goals, which is to build a community. So I'm able to say that, okay, like I'm one person, I need, like one more person to be able to make this from 10% to 20%. Or with media articles, I can say I need X amount of money to be able to do this training to make sure that we get more media articles. So, or same with like videos. Video probably requires actual money to make. So if I can show that without any funding, I do like these many videos, then, or like see what I can do with money. There is a lot of value in doing this exercise. It's boring, it takes time, but there is a lot of value in actually doing this. And it can start small. I think really, really small. Like even if we are on one platform, just writing blogs, like Nancy was saying, from, like doing 1 or 2 a month to, she wants to do 2 a fortnight or 1 a fortnight, right? And to like sort of quantify that and say, and it can change for everyone, and it's based on what you're able to do, a lot of other things, right? If your focus is on blogs or whatever, but to quantify it is very, very important, and to start like to do it today. And so like there is this impression that once I have set all these things in place, then I will measure, but that could take 6 months or a year. And like, let's say in that time, like there is no written proof of any work that you've done, or written proof of like where you are going with this, or what is the strategy that you're trying to build. That is, I am just looking at the time, so I'm going to go a little faster. This is an implementation plan. This I spoke about. This is how we put our content together. Vaishnavi, go ahead. You had a question? You raised your hand.
Yeah, from the last slide, when we talk about measuring success and impact, so I know on social media that you have specific algorithms and specific comments and all of that you can measure, but be it with blogs or with videos, how do we really measure success? Because we know we are putting up so many posts or so many videos a month, but how do we engage how people are engaging with it, or what is actually coming out of it, or is that not the point?
So one way to do it is, so that again depends on what you want to achieve. So for CSEI, we link all the blog posts to an ask, like so either a newsletter subscription or like a collaborate with us. So we have 2-3 asks that we have like a call to action. So and then the call to action is sort of measured. And I think there are only 2-3 places where this call to action goes. It goes on the newsletter, it goes on the blog, and sometimes it goes on social media. And I think that that is how we measure the success of that. It also so we are still small enough that some of the measurement actually comes from anecdotes. Like if somebody told somebody that, oh, this article was nice, or somebody clapped for it, or like basically the interactions that come up because of that, that's also measured. That I haven't mentioned in this, but we do get, like for instance, something that's that gets measured anecdotally is we get a lot of collaborate with us emails or whatever on one of our IDs, but that ID is only in it's from our collaborate with us form on the website. So that's the only way you can receive that. So we try to make that unique, especially with Bitly or something like that, where we can track where this is coming from. But even if, I mean, I don't think like we have recently started going into that kind of detail, and it's not all the time. It's mostly for us to have a sense that this is how it's going. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
So yeah, this one I have spoken about already. I think the big thing with planning is that it gives you some wriggling room, like when there is an emergency. The same with like events and things like that, right? Like event is 90% pre-planning, and once the event starts, there's very little you can do to fix it if something goes wrong. But the point of planning to a T is that you are not like, you're fully available when that event is happening, you're fully available for an emergency, and you're not doing things that could have been planned earlier. So I think the same goes for like communication planning as well. The more you plan and the more that can be automated or templatized, or like there is a way in which things are done, the more you'll be able to respond to something unexpected, like trends. Or this is, you want to take let me just look at how much else we have to cover, because it's already 4:20. Audiences and purpose. Okay, maybe I will talk about purpose first, and then we can come back to this. So this is starting. I think this slide is important because it says you must have organizational buy-in. I can't stress that enough. Like, you need to have organizational buy-in, especially with communications, with planning communications, because otherwise you'll be spending a lot of time just convincing people that you are not a support function. Like, you have to be central, especially in like this day and age. You have to be a core function, and you have to be core to the organization. The way CSEI does, like things through purpose, is that we want to be, we're thinking about being a thought leader, and we're thinking about building community, which are two things that we want to accomplish. I'll talk about like becoming a thought leader, because building a community requires a much larger conversation. Like I said, we try to like document everything that we do, and we try to synthesize everything before documenting. And this synthesized bit is not there yet. We are looking at how to spend more time just thinking about what needs to be documented, other than just put everything on the blog. So that's, we are in the process of doing that. But we do document our like process. So everything that goes into how we work, all our challenges, all our successes, all our failures, all our insights, all of that is documented. The other big thing, I don't know if you guys face this, is talking about work as it happens. I have worked mostly with researchers who have an aversion to talking about like something before a project is complete. Like
That's sort
they,
of like jinxing it.
yeah, like they work on like a minimum of 3 to 5 year projects, and they're like, at the end of 3 years, once the report is out, I will talk about it. So with CSEI, we are trying to break that. I think we have been successful. So there has been a lot of like it's a there is a resistance to it, but we are overcoming it faster than I had assumed, because like within the team there is like the intention to communicate. And the other thing we do is to make all of our outputs, um, like all of our outputs outward facing. What that basically means is that if we have a proposal, like we look at if somebody's put a proposal together for a project and send it out and it's been accepted, then we think like look at how to make it an outward first facing article, so that they don't have to, they're not recreating that content, or it's not sitting on someone's like in someone's folder. Same with, I mean, Nancy, because you were talking about GIS, like we do have a GIS team and GIS, like people working on GIS. So we try to do map-based stories, though the maps are created for something else entirely, but we try to pitch map-based stories which are very like which editors actually welcome a lot, because it's like really intense content, right? So yeah, I think that's something we try to do with maps, which otherwise just get created, two people see it, and then it just sits there. So we're trying to make the most of that. This is how we are thinking about like repurposing, and like generally like how we go about doing this. I think I want to like hear from you about how you think about like the purpose of your communication. Like how is comms furthering your organization's goals? Is your organization on board with your comms plan? That might be a that might be a difficult question to answer, but yeah, you don't need to answer it if you don't want.
Okay. Okay. For me, I think they kind of, so before I joined, Tech for Wildlife used to be LLC, and they are recently registered as a non-profit. And with being a non-profit, the fact that they do conservation and they work towards conservation was not a visible component, which is why like my position had sort of came up. Okay, this is something we need to like put forward and communicate. Okay, we are working towards communication. So they are like 100% in like favor of the comms plan. Like they do want to go for the visibility, and like because they have like I think seen firsthand how networking works, but the work always takes priority, which is where they don't have time to do this, and that's where like a dedicated person comes in. It makes sense at the position at the scale they are in. Uh, Furthering comms goal, currently I really like the setup at office because it's three of us like brainstorming. I will come up and say, how do you think about okay putting this on Discord and asking for like reviews, like go ask them to roast us or like tell me what's bad about this map and why is it working or not working, and they're like, oh yeah, sure, go for it. So it's nice. Where I do find resistance is that the fact that it's not always a priority, which is understandable. Yes, like work comes first, but I would like want to put it in part of their schedule itself. Spend some time on it and like tell me how this works or doesn't work. Which is where resistance comes in. It's not with the sharing part as such. It's like the follow back on the sharing. Okay, this has happened. What do we do next?
Yeah, I think I mean, I would disagree that where you say that this is not important. I think that's part of where the comms needs to be like
not
a
that
core
it's
function.
important. I think
There are more.
it's harder for me to like ask for priority on this. I feel like, oh, they're doing much more important work, and I'm like, no.
So I think like the dilemma there is, I mean, the way I would look at it is that uh, however amazing their work is, it does not, I mean, unless you put it out there, it's not going to amount to a lot.
Yeah.
And it's not going to, so in A3 or CSEI where I work, there's maybe like 5 people in your network, or let's say 50 people in your network will know what work you've done. But unless we do it as an organization putting this out systematically, this is not going to reach anyone. So one of the things, I think I skipped that slide, but like one of the things that I'm trying to get everyone to do is to look at how how your wait, I lost my train of thought. Sorry, just a second. Yeah, to shift, like basically to look at not the deliverable as not a report, or it's not a thing that you're submitting to someone, but to look at the number of people reading it, for instance. So one of my like pet grouses is that we put out all these reports which are 150 pages of about whatever, but I don't know in 2022 who reads a 152 page report, right? Where we have like 30-second videos that we don't have the patience to watch, right? And so to shift that deliverable from just submitting that report to whoever, to the funder, to someone, as an annual report or whatever, but to turn that into something quantifiable, which is like, you tell me how many people were engaged by this report and why are we putting it out in this format. So I think that way it's important to have that conversation and to say that this is important. Like, you can't move on to the next thing before you talk about this. And I think that is very important to becoming a core function, like communications becoming a core function within the organization. Sorry, I completely derailed that around the room. Krishma, do you want to go next?
Sure. Sorry, I missed the two questions. One is furthering goal and the other is?
You don't need to answer the second question if you don't want to.
I mean, it's cool. So on furthering the goal, so Socrates isn't really focusing on one particular sector. It's sector agnostic. So one way comms is furthering our goal is to be able to find more partners, and most of the work or projects that come along our way is through partners and ideas that they're interested in. So to give you an example, last year we did something around minimum support price for the future, and this was something that our partner was interested in, and they brought in a whole bunch of other people who had different schools of thought. So, and that led to a snowballing kind of effect. So I think that being sector agnostic really helps in our communication also being fluid. So I think that's how comms is furthering our goal. And secondly is, we don't really have a comms plan yet because it's a organization that's still sort of molding its way. But and like you said, right, like since I mean, what you have planned for maybe even next month might not happen as planned, and things might just get derailed. But it's not to say that nothing is happening. But perhaps calendaring it and at least having some view of the near future, it might be really helpful. So yeah, that's as honest as I can get. Thanks.
Sorry, I'll skip this question. I'll think in the interest of time. It might not really contribute much.
All right.
Okay, I can go. So how is comms furthering your organization goals? Right now, the organization looks at comms as a support function, unfortunately or fortunately. And I think the point of communication is to be able to get more funders, to be able to get more individuals who will work with us, whether it's give us a piece of their land to help us build forests or an open well, all of that. So comms is just looked at as another way we can get more people on board. The second question is the org on board with your comms plan. It's a bit of a struggle. I'm still trying to convince them why we should move away from WhatsApp and try to get like a company Slack or something like that. So it's also fairly new, long way to go. But yeah, very, very baby stages.
Thank you. So I think so this was the big thing that I wanted to talk about. The audience question, I think we can take this as the last question if we are almost out of time. I wanted to spend some time talking about like what your struggles are, like what are the challenges that you're facing specifically. But we can talk about, let's talk about audience, like who your primary audience is. Do you know what channels they're on? Do you know like how is your content sort of reaching that audience?
Okay, can I go first? All right. Primary audience is very scattered because it kind of varies a lot. I know it's majoritarily conservationists and academics with a bunch of people who are interested in furthering tech for conservation and stuff like that. The other primary audience is a very interested bunch of citizen scientists, which is very interesting for me because these are the people who tend to interact more. So for me, like for example, I work with them, but I do not understand GE at all. So I'm like, if you are writing a blog on GE, you have to dumb it down so I understand, which helps because I'm like a metric. Like if you can explain it to me, you can explain it to everybody. So primary audience works. The only thing right now I'm not doing, and I'm not sure if we should do, is designating a social media or a particular space for a particular audience. Like, because from where I stand, I don't know if it might backfire, it might work. And it's sort of like error on the side of caution. So I'm not sure what to do for that. Which is why I've not like said, okay, this is the channel these people are on, and they are not. The demographic also varies quite a lot, age-wise and like gender-wise or whatever. Mostly because a lot of people I have like met so far in office have people who have actually moved away from a proper tech career to conservation. So they're all like transdisciplinary. So they necessarily don't have a channel because they're still following the channel they used in their youth, to say. So it's very hard to like, okay, put them in boxes. So that's where like it's still like, do I make this decision or not? So there is no content tailoring as of now because of these constraints. That's my answer.
Thank you.
I'll let Nikita and Vaishnavi go ahead. I don't have much to add here. I've already talked.
Yeah, actually, really relate to what Nancy says, because I also read that, you in your learning, you're saying it cannot be everyone, and the more specific it is, the more targeted your communication can be. I'm trying to wonder about that because the kind of information that you're trying to generate and like also create here is for this larger audience, and it's not just for conservationists, or it's not just for like these scientists or people who are working in the field, but actually to communicate with people who are not a part of the field, but also matters to them or is relevant to them, right? In terms of what they need to do within their own homes or whatever, like for it matters. So, yeah, that's just, I guess, it's just a thought here, not really answering any of your questions, I guess. So
that's okay. I think so. The example I like to, I mean, our audience is everyone is a question that you hear internally. I mean, it's an answer that you hear internally as well, right? I hear it a lot. And my example is always that imagine something as generic as a soap. Like all of us use soap, right? But soap is still marketed to women of a certain age, of a certain social sector, like social class. And there is a reason why that audience is that specific. It's not that other people don't use soap, right? But or let's take what is another example? Dettol is marketed to mothers. Like you always see a mother with a child who's whatever sick or like fallen or something. So there is a reason why like somebody like Dettol or somebody like Dove or Lux or any of those, they are spending so much money on their marketing, and their marketing is not that their commodity is not used by everyone. It is meant to be used by everyone, but they have chosen a targeted market, and they are like specifically targeting it and saying like this I want this person to buy it. And I think the reason why that's useful is that if you are able to reach that person, it also means that everyone in their network, like you're reaching everyone in their network. So if you are able to reach let's say a woman who is a woman who's married with a child, if that's your audience, and if you're able to reach that person successfully through your marketing, then you're reaching her family, her like neighbors or networks or friends, or like it's sort of ripple from there. And it's a very point, like you just touch a point and then it sort of ripples out from there. So I think that's the reason why it's important to define your audience even down to a person, like where you can say, okay, it's a donor, like it's inner donor, it's like a female donor who's interested in these areas of work. And it's not that other people shouldn't receive our communication, but that if this person receives it, then we have successfully reached our target. And I think the more specific you can be, the more clarity there is in your communication, if that makes sense.
Should I go?
Yes, please.
I think in this area, there is fortunately some clarity. So our primary audience are our funders, and what channel they are on is largely LinkedIn and Twitter. And how I tailor content to this audience is I do have some experience understanding the specific languages of different social media platforms. And for LinkedIn, it's usually this inspirational hustle kind of tone that always works. Especially funders seem to have a big, they really enjoy it when they see people struggling. They think it's a big, this is the true India. I don't agree with a lot of it personally, but it works. So we do tailor our content to be more inspirational, more aspirational, and just show how much hard work we put into that. So yeah, that works.
Okay, thank you for being frank about that. I think I've jumped around a little bit. This is just our primary audience, which I have talked about already, which is partners and donors mostly, and academic institutions, and how we, like what we say to them, essentially. That's really it. That's my presentation. I've gone through most of it. I wanted to take, I know we're way late on this, but I want to take 2 minutes to just ask you, this is something, did this session make sense? Am I on the right track? We can have another session if you have specific things that you have in mind that need to be tackled. I'm open to that. So I just want to get a sense of what you thought of this session.
It was actually very nice. Like for me to like even get in touch with people who are doing similar tasks at different organizations was great. A lot of your content made sense. It was like sort of validating ki, okay, you're on the right track, which was not something I didn't have like a person to ask, which is sort of like, okay, I've read this here, this makes sense for them, this makes sense for them. It's all in bits and pieces.
Mhm.
Since you had this presentation, it made sense that, okay, like it is the line of thought that you carry forward. And yes, all of it might not be relevant, but having a starting point really helps. And which is, I think, this was a great starting point for all of us, if I may say so. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to go? Yeah.
I found it quite useful too. I mean, I also learned from the others in the room, right? So I like the bit on what you said about measuring impact and also planning. So that's like I think one of the biggest takeaways for me. But yes, overall, I found it quite useful.
I did not answer your question. Do you want to like take a minute and ask that question again?
Good question. On.
Okay, yay.
Sorry.
Since both of us have forgotten it.
Maybe that's the next session then.
Yeah. Nikita, what about you?
Yeah. So just coming to what I wanted to say, add in as well, that the session was really useful in two ways. One, that you were also sharing, just it was really structured and well thought through, and just what we also needed. And it was also really useful to have this as a conversation and hear from others as well in this room, so that you're just getting perspectives on how what are the challenges that you're facing. So it was really useful, and I think just to have this community of like communication, because we're all singularly working on it, is really like helpful, even if it's a continued effort in that process. So really appreciate this workshop. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just lots to add on to what everyone has said so far. Like Nancy said, it was very validating because I'm new to the job, and I thought I was hyper focusing on specific communication things. So it was good to know that I'm actually not, and all of these are really important. To be quite frank, it felt a little bit like a support group where I can just be like, yes, these are the problems that are happening, and people seem to get it. I really hope there are more sessions. I would like to understand more on how I can work on internal communication with the team. And honestly, it's not too big of a problem, but just to be able to communicate in an effective way. And I think my biggest learning today was just knowing that one person can't do it all and take everything on their own. So start small and hopefully get more people on board with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just
Thank you so much.
Vaishnavi said as well, just that, we've spoken about external communication, but like highlighting an important point that internal communication also matters so much. And that's something that smaller organizations simply don't have in place as well.
Yeah.
And I think that would be important to touch upon as well. And I have no clue, honestly, like I have no clue how we can like actually streamline that as well. Not just streamline external communication, outward communication, but just internal as well. That's, totally lacking. So that's, everything is just this big question mark at this point. So thank you really for this conversation.
This is really helpful. Like, I'm just going to take all of this back to the organization and be like, hey, many other people also think this way. So listen to me.
We'll back you up. Like if you have a form to sign, we'll back you up.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you so much. I feel very validated in what I was saying. And I think I don't know if I'm the best person to do an internal communication session, because we're a very small team. We're maybe now around 20 people. But like the whole team is 20 people. The whole organization is 20 people. So it's still on a WhatsApp sort of basis. Like I can worst case call the director and be like, you need to give me this right now. So I don't think I'm the best person to do this. But yeah, like I think it's equally important. Like I think with CSEI, the most important thing, the thing that makes me want to come back to work every day, right, is that there is no resistance to communication. Nobody is saying, I don't want to do this. Like everyone's like, I want to do this. Tell me how to do this. Like I might not have time. So these are all things that we can work through. Like earlier, I think in my career, a lot of my time was spent just pushing people to say, you must write. This is why you must write. Like you must like document things that you're doing. I think the big change here is that there is intention. There is intention, and everyone buys into this idea that communications is important. So that's half the struggle, like one, and the rest of it is just execution, which is, I think, just like more work, which can be handled. That's my part in short. Thank you so much for taking the afternoon to like listen to me blabber on about communication.
No, you didn't blabber on. You had a very structured way of talking.
Yeah.
That was
Great.
not blabbering.